So for my table runner, I'm going to use 2 of each of these colors. They're all 10-inch blocks, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. I'm going to make 18 blocks with these as my backgrounds and these various whites as my spikes on this Unit 3S paper from the Charm Elements pack number 3. Today we're going to prepare our Charm Elements pack 3, and it is full of these star blocks. Each block is made up of 4 squares. These blocks can be used in many projects, one of them being the Haystacks quilt. That is a cut loose press pattern. Pretty cute. You need 4 Charm Element packages to make that quilt. However, if you buy just one Charm Element package, you'll have enough to make a pillow that's 2-sided, or you can make a table runner. So let's just get started and see what's in here. We have our instructions, and we have 2 pages marked NP41. They're pretty big, and they're newsprint. And what we're going to do with these pages is cut apart the components we see on these pages. So these papers are pretty big. You have 10 squares on one of these pieces of paper, so it's enough to do a 2-sided pillow. If you want to do a table runner, you'll have to have 2 of these pages, and that gives you enough to do a table runner. So one package will get you either one. If you want to do the quilt, you're going to need 4 packages. That's 8 pages of these squares in order to do the quilt. You'll also need a variation of fabrics. So I'm choosing a light color or a white for my points, and I'm choosing a yellow for my background, my little bit of sunshine there. So you need, the background fabrics have to be 10-inch strips. You can have a variety of them. You need 1 10-inch strip for 10 squares. You need 2 10-inch strips for 20 squares. So one package of these Charm Element number 3 blocks will need 2 10-inch strips. And then you need more for the white or the spiked fabric. So the Charm Elements package tells you to cut 10.5-inch strips for this, but then you subcut them into 6.5-inch by 2.5-inch pieces. So you can use an all-white jelly roll if you want and cut them into 6.5-inch lengths. Or you can cut a 6.5-inch strip and get as many 2.5-inch wide pieces off that strip. You'll get 16 of them off of one strip. So I want a variety of different white strips in each square. So I'm going to have a variety of 2.5-inch by 6.5-inch pieces cut for this pattern. So I'm going to start off with 6.5-inch strips, and then I'm going to subcut them to 2.5 inches. Here's how you do the papers. These are so big, and you have 2 papers that are identical. They say NP41. One corner has a number 1 in it, and the opposite corner has a number 2 in it. And then opposite the other 241 is another one that says 241. So if you have them stacked on top of each other so that they're identical, you can stick them together. I can see through 2 pieces of paper pretty easily, so I can hold it up to the light and make sure they're aligned. And I want to do that in all 4 corners. If I had more layers to stack, because I had 3 or 4 or even 8 of these pages, I wouldn't be able to see through them all. So the way you would do that, if you're doing the quilt and you have 8 of these pages, the way you do that is to find a corner or a cross section on your page. Let's say here's a cross, and you're going to put a pin in to exactly where that intersection is, and then you're going to go down to the page below it and put a pin in that intersection. And you can do that through all of the pages, all 8 pages. And once all 8 pages are done, don't set the pin yet, but go to all 4 corners, find an intersection, and do the exact same thing. And then when all 4 corners have been stacked and aligned by the graphic, then you'll be able to set your pin in the 4 corners And then you can cut out all 8 pages at the same time. Very quick and easy. I want to make sure that they don't slip while I'm cutting them. So now I'm going to just put one pin randomly in the middle of each of these square graphics. And then that way, they're not going to fall apart as I'm cutting through them. If I cut the edges off first and there's no pins on the middle, all the middle ones will just go floating. We don't want them to float away. So each one of these squares is going to get a pin. And now they all have pins. So I can just take my ruler and my rotary cutter, and I can start cutting them apart. Now when it comes to this piece here that says Unit 3S Background Template Layout Sheet, that is a 10-inch square, and it's going to fit perfectly on your 10-inch strips. So you can cut that out right on the outside line. And you don't want to cut through any pins, so be careful if you have a pin in the corner. And now my 2 pages are stacked. I have 2 template layout sheets, and I'm going to put those aside. The rest of these are called unit papers, and it's because each unit gets its own fabric attached to it. Now, you don't cut them out right on the outside line. You cut them a tiny bit bigger. I like to cut them about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch bigger. So here I have 3 in a row. It'll be easy to just line up that ruler so that it's a little bit bigger and cut the whole row off. This set of 2 I'm going to have to work on their own. And you don't want to hit any pins. In the end, we're going to take all the pins out and just stack them up. So here I am. I can take these, and I'm just going to cut right in between the 2 rows. However wide or extra that happens to be around each block, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to center my ruler between the rows. And you can imagine if you had 8 layers of these, if you were to cut them out by scissors, how long it would take you 1 page at a time. Now I can cut in between each of these blocks, just directly in between, pick the middle ground. I'm going to finish cutting all these apart, and then I'm going to show you how to use your template layout sheet to cut your background fabrics. So have some 10-inch strips ready for whatever you'd like in your background. It could all be the same color. It could be a variety of colors. Then you'll also need some either 10-inch strips or 6.5-inch strips of your fabric choices that you want to use for the spikes. And again, that can be all one color or it can be a variety of colors. There's 6 spikes in each block. You could have each one a different color if you'd like. And in that case, you're going to need 6 strips that are 6.5 inches. Alright, I have my 10-inch strips laid out here. I have my 2.5-inch strips laid out here. I'm going to do 3 different kinds of white on whites. One of them's a little beigeier than another, creamier than another. But I'm going to do 3 different ones because there's 6 strips on a block. And I want to do 2 colors of each spike. So here we go. First I'm going to cut off my salvage edges on all of this. Make sure I get through it all. And now I want 6.5-inch strips, but I want 10-inch blocks. So first I'm going to cut these 10-inch blocks, and I'm not going to cut through the strips. So I'm going to just push these aside for a bit. So that's a stack of 10-inch blocks. You could use a layer cake as well and like choose through your layer cake which colors you like for the backgrounds. And now I'm going to do 6.5-inch rectangles by 2.5 inch. So I'm just following the line on my mat. These don't have to be exact, but at least 6.5 inches. And that gives me 2 spikes of each color for one block, and I have these set 4 deep. So this gives me enough for 4 blocks. So that's all I need for my pillow top, but I'm going to keep cutting these and I'm going to put them aside for my table runner. So looking at my spikes, if I were to number these colors 1, 2, 3, which would be 1, 2, 3 as well, and I want to color my spikes within the block every other one differently, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, then I'm going to pick these up so that I have 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3. And those are all stacked and ready to piece onto my 4 blocks. Now the backgrounds, I only have 4 blocks here, and if I want to do each one a different color, I just got to go through my stack and pick out the colors that I want. But I think I want to do 2 and 2. I think that I like, well, I know that I like this one. So I want to do 2 of those. And this is a little bit light, so maybe I want to do this with it, or actually I really like this one with it. 1. I must have another one in there. 2. So I'm going to make my pillow out of those 4 blocks. I'll put the rest of these aside to use in the table runner. And I'll also pick out some more colors too. I don't think I want it to be just yellows. I might pick out some other bright colors, or colors that I think the white will look good against. So for these ones, I'm just going to stack these 4 blocks up, and it doesn't matter what order they're in, as long as we keep them stacked as we're piecing. And now we can take our background template. Now we only need 1 background template, so I'll put the other one aside to use when I do the table runner. And this background template gets put on the square, and you can see when you're looking at it, there are little pieces in here that are certain shapes. Those are the shapes you're actually going to see in the pillow. The rest of this space out here is actually scrap. So they have these sew sides written on here, and over here they have cut lines written. Right now all I'm worried about is the whole size and shape of that template, and that it fits on top of my stack of fabrics. I can put as many under here as I'd like. If I was working on 20 blocks, I could put 20 pieces of 10-inch square fabric underneath one template. But I'm only working on 4 blocks, so I'm going to put 4. And I will put a paper clip on each section to keep it stacked in the order that I have it in, this original stack. And this is how we use this template layout sheet. Now that we have it on top of our stack of fabrics, we can take our ruler and we can cut along these cut lines to cut apart our sections. And we don't want to cut on the exact solid line that's within here, because that would leave us no seam allowance. The seam allowance is indicated by the dotted line outside that shape. But you can see that there's extra paper beyond the dotted line. That's to give you wiggle room while you're piecing. so that you don't have to worry about it fitting exactly like you do when you do traditional piecing. So don't cut on the dotted line either. Just cut out on these cut lines as indicated with all that extra fabric on there. I know it seems like a lot of waste. Some patterns by Quiltworx have less waste on their template layout sheets. This one's done like this because they want to make sure that if you're using a directional fabric, it's going to look right when you're piecing your pillow top or your blocks. And they also consider the grain line of the fabric when they do this. So now I have them all cut apart, and they're numbered section 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. And when you look at the papers we're going to sew them to, they start with section 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13 in the background. And then they've numbered the spikes section 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Of course, our spikes don't have any papers on them to tell us what numbers they are, but we know that we're going to do 4 papers at a time. So if we want to stack these in the order that we're going to sew them in, we want our number 1 to be on the top and our number 13 to be on the bottom. And I'm going to just start by putting my 13 down on the table, and I put it down with the sew side facing away from me. And then we know that next to 13 is number 12, which is a spike. So I'm just going to take a layer of 4 of these and put that down. And then here's my section 12, 4 more pieces of spike, which are all the same color. And then here's my 9, 4 more pieces of spike, which ends up being 8. And then here's my number 7. Again, I'm always keeping the sew side facing away from me. 1, 2, 3, 4. That ends up being 6. Here's my 5. The next 4 end up being my section 4. Here's my section 3. And those last 4 ones are my section 2. And then my section 1 is on the top. And now that's what we need it to look like when we're ready to start piecing it. So here we have our stack of sections and our papers that we're going to stitch them to. And I'm just going to fold them up in a group like that and put them in a baggie, and they're ready to go. And so if you were going to do a quilt with 10 of one color, 10 of another color, whatever, however many you want to do of each color, you can take your unit papers and stack them in a way that you have enough pieces of fabric under each section paper to do each of these unit papers. And just get them all together, put them in a baggie, and then when you have time, you can work on one little stack at a time. You don't have to work on all of them at a time. It'll be quicker to go through one stack of 4 than it will be to go through a stack of 60. And so you get some instant gratification. We're just going to do 4 because that's what my short workshop is all about. Instant gratification.